Michael Bach is the founder and CEO of the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion. He recently sat down with Canadian HR Reporter TV to discuss the misconceptions and discrimination lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender employees continue to face in the workplace.
Recently, we did a survey on LGBT inclusion in the workplace called In and Out, Diverging Perspectives on LGBT Inclusion in the Workplace. And the purpose of the report was to have a better understanding of the experiences of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans-identified people in Canadian workplaces, because there's never been any research done in this area in Canada before. So we surveyed over 1,500 people, did some one-on-one interviews, and managed to come up with a very interesting perspective. Obviously, we have a different landscape here in Canada. Same-gender marriage has been in place for 10 years, more than 10 years, whereas in the United States, as an example, they're still fighting for national recognition of marriage equality. And we have different legislations, we have different culture. So traditionally what's happened around the LGBT space is we sort of look at US research and take the 10% rule. Of course, we're about 10% of the population. And what we found is that while there are some consistencies, it's not necessarily an accurate portrayal. Some of the more significant findings from the survey, there's a couple that really stand out. First of all, there's very much a difference between the experiences of what we call sexual minorities and those who identify as being part of the trans community. There are big differences between those two groups, and oftentimes we group them together. The acronym is LGBT. However, what we're talking about is sexual orientation and gender identity, and the two things are not synonymous. So you can be a lesbian and be trans-identified, but you can also be straight and be trans-identified. So one of the biggest things that we found was that the experiences of trans people were drastically different. The other biggest finding, I would say, is really around the differences between LGBT respondents and heterosexual cisgendered respondents. So the responses from heterosexual cisgendered people were that there was no discrimination, there was no homophobia or transphobia, that basically everything was rosy, whereas LGBT respondents found it to be a very different experience. They were experiencing homophobia and transphobia themselves, they were witnessing it, they were not out in the workplace. So there's a few things that employers can do to help combat discrimination and bias. And first and foremost is make a commitment to be an inclusive employer. And this is a very active action. They're waiting for a sign that says it's okay to be LGBT in this workplace. And that sign needs to be in the literalist form, a rainbow flag, some sort of email as part of a pride festivity to say, you know, we're here, we're supporting the community. Also creating education and awareness programs that focus on LGBT positive environments. So helping to eliminate transphobic or homophobic comments. And also allowing LGBT people to self-identify in an official capacity.